All right, welcome to Culture Couch Live. We've got two of our regulars. We've got Carly and Misso. So firstly, Carly, Misso, how are you guys going?
Hi, Ruzi. Good.
Very well,
Sunny
Ruzi.
day, so we're always more happy when it's sunny outside.
Yeah, how much better is it when the sun's shining? Hey, it's fantastic. And we've also got our head of wellness for Performance by Design, Tammy Ruse, jumping on the call. So, Tammy.
Hello. Lovely to see everyone.
You, Tammy.
We're excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited for this too. Good conversations.
Yeah, so look, what we thought we'd do today is rather address a specific question that we normally get or a specific incident that may have happened during the week. We're certainly getting a lot, Carly, from a lot of our clients around, you know, what is health and wellness and fitness and diet and all those sorts of things, because people have been really thrown out of their regular routine. So we thought we'd get Tammy on to have a really good conversation. We know Misso's not only part of our leadership team and one of our facilitators, but his background is in sports science. So we just thought it was a really good conversation to have and hopefully give some tips to people at home. Now, there's going to be some people that go from running a marathon to never running. There's going to be some people, Tammy, that probably meditate 20 minutes a day to people that haven't heard about meditation. So we'll try and touch on all those spectrums. But Carly, I might throw to you. I mean, both in the workplace, what are you seeing? And also individually. I mean, you're a mum, married, kids, homeschooling, trying to work, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll throw to you first.
Yeah, I think we're speaking to a lot of our clients through the weeks and just making sure that them and their teams are okay. And particularly a few weeks ago when the sixth lockdown in Melbourne started, we were hearing that a lot of workplaces were feeling really depressed and really lethargic and just not knowing when it's going to end. And I think that headspace was difficult for people to get around. And now we're sort of settling into it. We know we've got to get our head into it. We've got to get on with it. So I think it's just the little things, again, that people need to really keep in mind. So obviously when you're at home and you've got kids and you've got family and homeschooling, there's just no time for yourself. And I think that's the thing that drops off, because a lot of parents who are homeschooling then have to do work early before school, work after school. So it ends up being a 24-hour day. So you just don't get time to fit anything in for yourself. So in those circumstances, it's really just about the small things. And look, I'm no expert, but making sure you get your steps in and you eat relatively healthy. And I think you just sort of have to prioritize the wellness of the family too in those times. So yeah, it's a really interesting situation because it's quite a juggling act.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, so let's start, Misso, maybe with some really basic stuff. I mean, you and I have been in a system that's really habitual. And to Carly's point, I think one of the first thing that happens, everyone gets thrown out of their routine with COVID. You know, whether that's getting in the car, driving to work, getting your coffee at the station, you know, after you've had your breakfast, walking to the station, getting your paper, whatever it is. So I might start with you, Misso, because you and I have been in a really structured routine. And it is so important, isn't it, to start with maintaining some form of structure.
Yeah, absolutely. Routine's critical. And, you know, I take Carly's point there is that that's the one thing that then goes out the window when you're homeschooling and you're trying to work from home as well. But one thing you said there, Carly, it's so important to try and maintain some time for yourself. So building that into your routine, because, you know, we talk about benefits physiologically. Exercise provides you with those endorphins. And then if you can go outside on a beautiful day like today and add some sunlight, you're getting the melatonin as well. So it's a multiplier effect. But you need to find time in your schedule to do that and to give yourself some time. It's easier said than done, but it's so important. And when you think about exercise, to me, there are three key things. Think about heart rate, because heart rate's going to really determine the intensity that you should go at, and doing it at a sensible heart rate, but not too easy, so you're not getting nothing out of it. Progression's the next thing. Yeah. If you were to talk to physios about lockdowns, it's almost their busiest time in having to, to talk to people, because people say, well, I've got an aim, I want to run around the tan in 20 minutes, but they haven't run for 5 years. So they buy running shoes and they run 4 days in a row and they get stress fractures. And, so think about, well, how am I going to progress from where I am now to where I want to sort of get to? And then the third one's just consistency, just doing it regularly. It doesn't have to be every day, but 3 or 4 times a week. And, all of a sudden you're starting to exercise at a level where your fitness is improving.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. I'll come back to that, Miss Oka, some really good tips. But Tammy, I'll go to you. And one of the things I love when you talk about meditation and mindfulness is just pausing your brain. Talk to us about that. Your analogy around the phone. If your phone, just start with that, and then I want you to start with some really small tips around what that actually looks like from a practical point of view.
Sure. So in referencing, I always kind of give this discussion about our mobile phones and how attached we've become to technology or to that device in our hands. And so for most of us, if we were to get up in the morning and leave our house and it was at 17% battery, we'd be panicking and we'd be going, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through the day? Where can I recharge this? Where's my next stop? Is it going to be in the car? Is it a cafe? Is it my meeting? But you'd be already in this heightened state of anxiety because you're thinking, but it's low, and it's not going to get through. And I don't think people give enough time to the idea or the thought that the mind needs a rest too, and that we have to give it this pause. So do you ever consider, so instead of thinking about your mobile phone getting charged, when do you recharge your mind or recharge the body so that you actually can then take, again, when you look at your phone and you can see how much battery you have, when do you top up your own internal battery so that you can lead your best life possible or walk out that front door not feeling depleted, but having enough so-called like gas or petrol in the tank, I should say, get the right country. And so you've got that. So you've got that energy and you've got the ability then to navigate some of the challenges you have in your day. I think that's one of the things that people don't recognize is if you start your day out already feeling depleted and low, it is very hard to maintain a sense of feeling balanced or even to have patience or to be an effective communicator. So for leaders, or anyone working in teams and in business, we know that stress is the number one precursor to poor communication. So if you're not communicating effectively, then everyone or your team, your workspace gets affected too. So, and as Kali mentioned, being at home right now, then that means that even rolls over into your home life. So the reality is we have to try, and as challenging as this is, to prioritize ourselves right now. And it's as little as 5 to 10 minutes a day. I know Paul's mentioned give a few tips right now, but it's literally 5 to 10 minutes a day. You can make a significant change to your mental state that's going to bring you back into balance and physiologically start really taking you into a state of rest, recharge, and really kicking that autonomic nervous system out of that, fight or flight. So you get into that rest and digest. So you start to cultivate more positive emotions, energy levels, and you can cope with your day.
That's a really interesting point, Tammy, around leaders communicating when they're stressed and when they're under pressure. And I think a lot of leaders we're talking to, Reezy, is saying the same thing. My team is stressed, my team are under pressure, I'm finding it hard too. How do I manage it? And I think there's a lot of leaders who don't necessarily understand the link between stress and communication, and that's a really good point.
Yeah,
100%. I think, Tammy, to that point, we have to start with ourselves. I think even the most, and I always talk about this, even the most selfless footballer, Misso, that we saw still started with themselves, didn't they? If that was Brett Kirk or Kieran Jack or whoever that was, the starting point was always themselves. So I want to say that again. So even the most selfless leader has to start with themselves. So maybe we can do an exercise now, and maybe we can use Carly as a bit of an experiment, Carly. So what's your day look like now? And Misso and Tammy, so we can build Carly's day a bit. I think that might be worthwhile doing, because before we got on the call, Carly, you said your day was a bit of a mess. So let's try and construct Carly's day. What does it look like at the moment, Carly, with the kids?
Well, we sleep in until they wake us up, which can be any time, but hopefully they sleep till 7. And then you
Okay,
just do,
I'm going to stop it at each thing. So let's pick up on that, Tammy. What would you recommend? So it's probably going to be a lot of people out there that are tired or whatever. Let's start with that. What's a nice little thing that Ben and Carly can do before the kids get up potentially?
Okay. So, and as hard as this is going to sound, because this is the biggest paradox about meditation, I would suggest you set the alarm 10 minutes before the so-called wake up time, so that you allow yourself time to do some meditation or mindfulness or just some deep breathing, just where you actually do a breathing exercise. And the reason that is so important is because, number one, you're setting up your space to go into that relaxation, to really get the clarity, to get the balance, but you're nurturing the self first before you get going. Mornings are so powerful because you're setting up your day. So really consider that you set your entire day up from that first action that you do. So again, that you set the alarm 10 minutes earlier. The paradox about meditation is because people go, I don't have time. I said, you gain time the more you meditate. All the long-term studies, all the data, all the science shows you the more you meditate, the more time you gain, because your brain becomes orderly. So I want you to consider this for all the leaders or anyone listening. Your left and right hemisphere of your brain becomes coordinated the more you meditate. Okay.
So Tammy, I would often meditate before I go to sleep, and not because I think, okay, meditation's great. It's because I think my brain's so crazy that the only way I can wind down right now is if I put it on before I go to sleep. And that's so what you're saying is switch it around so that I'm starting with it rather than finish it.
Well, I'd even say do both.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I'm not talking about taking away. You cannot. It is such a fundamental, like it is so important, this idea of giving the mind a rest, because we have this mind where we're operating 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you never give it a rest. And people say, oh, but I give it a rest when I go for a run, or I give it a rest if I'm in the garden. That's my form of meditation. And what I would say to that is your body is still moving. What I'm talking about is being still, actually sitting, not actually asking your body to do anything else but be still. Focus on that link between the breath, the body, and the mind. And the more that you link into that, Carly, you'll notice the body relaxes and the mind quietens down. And that is how you actually create the physiological changes within the body to create that bridge that I was discussing, that I was talking about between the left and right hemisphere. So then if you start your day in that manner, that's great. But then you can also end your day so that it's almost like you filed away the busyness and you can let the mind relax naturally. All right. So it's really important, but that one key step. And if you look, and again, I know Paul's saying, let's dissect your day, but I would say for you, it's that 10 minutes. You haven't touched your mobile phone yet. Okay. So you've gotten up with the alarm. Excuse me, I'll rephrase that. You can then set the alarm for 10 minutes later. So say you set it for 6:50 a.m. Fine, at 7, it's going to go off. So you're not worried about, okay, I've slept in now, or the kids are going to naturally take me out of my meditation. That's fine. But then it's like, okay, what can I, you haven't looked at your news yet on your phone. You haven't looked at emails. You don't want to get in a habit of starting to do something when we're trying to get you to set your day up. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
setting yourself up for the day ahead. And then the second thing that most people, and Dave would know a lot about this, is you dehydrate overnight. Most people don't realize this. You really should have a big glass of water when you get up in the morning. Hydrate your brain. Before the cup of coffee, have a big glass of water. It is so important. So, for us, it's this meditation, hydration, and then movement. That's how I start, win the morning, win the day, so-called. And I put that in, but it took a lot for Paul and I to get to the point to go, we have to prioritize ourselves, because I'm no good for anyone else if I'm not functioning right. So you need to change it around and go, I have to value my own health, change this around so I can help everyone else.
And I'll give you some on that. I'm going to throw it to you now before we go back to Carly, because I think there's some really practical tips. How important is it? Because I know a lot of our clients are saying, oh, well, I used to do this before, but now I'm actually in my office. So you're waking up effectively in your office. You're not getting to your office. How important is the morning, as Tammy said, to win the morning? Now, that might be certainly diet, it might be exercise, as Tammy said, it might be meditation, but it's got to be something that suits people. I don't think we can force anyone to do something they're not. But as an overall concept, how important is that morning to your overall health?
Well, it's critical because, everything that Tammy says is fantastic there and about setting your day up. And I would then say, after completing that, doing some sort of exercise in the morning just makes you feel good about yourself. So it's adding to that, winning the morning, winning the day. But then I would sort of take back, I wanted to just talk a little bit about sleep and just some basics about sleep.
Right.
So really, one thing I say to people a lot is you go to bed to sleep. You don't go to bed to watch a movie or listen to music or, so having that differentiation is actually really important, because where you sleep and how you sleep is a critical way to set yourself up to be healthy, both mind and body. And a couple of things, we talk about sleep hygiene, which is really what's your sleep environment like. To me, there are three things. Temperature. People often sleep in bedrooms that are just too hot. So it needs to be nice and cool. And in winter, that's easy, but, you need to work on it in summer. Comfort, we're buying so much stuff online. Treat yourself. Get a pillow that's a bit more comfortable, or a doona that, feels really good. And the other one is devices. Make sure you don't have devices, obviously apart from your mobile for an alarm or something like that, but don't have your computer on your lap in bed. Don't have your iPad watching a movie. Okay, go to bed to sleep. It's really, really important.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's a great point, Miss. So, Carl, let's get back to you and your day. Let's extend and keep going. Maybe what happens through your work day and with the kids and that.
Well, I will already break a rule because I always have coffee before I do anything else in the morning, Tammy. So I take that on board.
Yeah.
But now that we're homeschooling starts at 9. So then we just all rush around like idiots getting everyone dressed and ready, and then we have fights about who's getting dressed and who's not getting dressed, and then we start the day by 9 o'clock. What
about your eating, Carl? You touched on that before we came on. So because I suspect that's a really big thing I want to go do now, Miss O, and also some pauses during the day, Tammy, and maybe getting down the stress level. So talk to us about, Carly, how your eating patterns are going through the lockdown process, you and Ben and the kids.
Well, when the kids are around, I think you prioritise it more, because if they don't eat regularly, you get grumpy. So it's always like, snack time, make sure you do that, lunchtime, afternoon tea. So you get a bit more strict when they're around to make sure that they're always sort of levelled out, and obviously try and keep it pretty healthy. So, fruit and then whatever snacks are available, but try and keep it pretty good. And then, we always struggle with dinner because I'm not a great cook. It's not one of my, favourite pastimes. So it's always, you get to 5 o'clock and you're like, oh, what are we going to do tonight? So it's just about the planning. It's about, what am I going to do? What have I got available? And just thinking about it beforehand. That's what's really important for us. Because the people who love it, it's a bit of an outlet for them, I think. But the people who don't love it, it's just like, oh, who could be bothered? Sometimes we just have toasted sandwich and we don't care about it because it's too much effort. And I think that's another one of the traps you get into in lockdown, is that sort of lose a bit of that energy, which again takes away from the focus on nutrition, which I'm sure, Dave, you're going to tell me about now.
And probably, Dave, on that. So just some really, again, simple things that people can, because I think what Carly's saying is probably typical, either not eating regularly, just binging on, there's a bag of chips in the fridge, or, it's 2 o'clock, I haven't eaten, or whatever. So let's get to that diet concept, and maybe just some really good tips around that, Miss O.
So one of the basic ones, Ruzi, is, and it sounds really simple, but you eat what's in the house. So it comes back to what you do when you go to the supermarket, what you put in the trolley, making really good decisions there is then going to, compound down the track, because when you go, looking in the pantry or the fridge for a snack, there's a lot of fruit there. So that's your default. So really be quite strong with what you buy and what you shop for. And what I would suggest, especially with kids around, is, without getting too technical, is the high glycemic index foods versus the low. And the low ones are things that are really high in sugar, very processed. Whereas the high glycemic index are, your grainy breads and cereals and fruit and things like that. So, but it does come back to what you put in the pantry and what you put in the fridge. And there's nothing more basic than that. So we want to give ourselves a little bit of leeway in lockdown, but try and be disciplined when you go and do your shopping.
I also think, Dave, that with lockdown, there's not many treats. You can't go out, you can't see people. There's not many treats. So when you do go out, well, I find that we're sort of going, let's go treat ourselves. Let's go to the cafe and get a milkshake or whatever it might be. So I think you've also got to be mindful of those things, like save your treats for your once a week or whatever it might be. Tammy, do you see that a bit at the moment?
Absolutely. And, the biggest reason that people stray from healthy eating is that they don't allow themselves a treat now and again. And it's just human nature.
Yeah.
But I think as long as you're not making the treat the majority of the meal and you're making it a treat, that's the important thing.
I want to talk about opportunity, Tammy, because Carly touched on something which normally, so let's look at opportunity in lockdown when people are at home. The opportunity there, and you talk about a lot, is to get out into nature, because typically if we're in a workplace, we feel like we're constrained the whole day. We're going to go to lunch with work colleagues. We're in the Melbourne CBD. We're walking down to a coffee shop, paved road, paved everywhere sort of thing. I want you to take us through a bit of that, because there is a bit of opportunity in lockdown, isn't there? To go for a walk at lunchtime, get out into nature. Tell us the importance of that and being present around nature as well, and the positive impact that can have.
Absolutely. I think, again, like nature is probably one of my biggest go-tos, because immediately when you step outside and you get fresh air, that feeling of just like, it's like you relax straight away because you're outside. But what it also does is it changes perspective. And I think for anyone right now juggling kids, husband, wife, the whole work life, that whole balance right now with the homeschooling, everything that's going on, there's nothing better than changing your perspective, and because it just clears your mind. But it allows you also, just in walking, just getting that movement in the body, it just allows you to let go of a lot of frustration, and to be honest, it starts changing your mindset. The more grounded you can become in that movement and walking, and perhaps something that you can do, even though it might sound like it's a little bit of effort, it honestly goes such a long way, is have the option of having a picnic with the kids, or that once a week, just packing something up where you've done it as a family and go out. But it's going to be about boundaries too. And I think that's something that people at the moment are finding really hard, to have some really clear boundaries around the time frame. And something that I know they're doing a lot of research now on is this idea of, is it depression or burnout? Because the distinction, people are working more than they've ever worked before because of Zoom, and you're not actually turning off. And that was, like I keep referencing the mobile phone, but in Australia, that we know that there's more mobile phones per capita in Australia per person than in any other country in the world. Like, I think that's pretty much has been said so many times about the number of devices. And so it's obviously something that Australians are attracted to and enjoy having. However, they can hijack your normal routines, or your normal kind of like the biorhythms of how we're supposed to be living life, that those cycles, like Dave said, you go to bed to sleep. So it's like you shouldn't be, the devices can really take over. So it's about creating some boundaries. So how can you create some really healthy boundaries around, well, if I was at the office, I would have, as Paul mentioned, gone out to have lunch with a colleague, or perhaps I had that work meeting. So it's not about taking those things away. If you have an opportunity, get out for that hour that you would have normally done, or consider that you would have traveled to work on, in car or on train or on the bus, whatever it might be. It's not about, I have to sit there and just kind of like do whatever to clock in hours. So you want quality over quantity. So it's about create those appropriate boundaries that are going to help you navigate this. And, and I think a big thing too is, what do you enjoy? Right now, things have become so heavy and so just like monotonous. So what are those things that you can bring into your life that bring joy? Or, that, is it, God, I haven't been on a bike. That might be fun. I'm going to go ride a bike. Or I said to Paul today, a girlfriend said to me, I think I'm going to buy a stand-up paddleboard for this summer. So whatever it might be, but find something that you enjoy. Again, you've got to have something to look forward to just remember, life is meant to be enjoyed, and it's not meant to be just your head down and just, that doesn't do anything for your mindset. It doesn't do anything for your health, your well-being. It doesn't do anything for personal relationships, because if you're really down, then everyone else around you gets impacted. And we all know that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Tammy. And I think also from a corporate point of view and a work point of view, if you can get out for a walking meeting, or if you can, listen to a podcast or do something while you're out and about, try and do those things, because you don't need to be sitting at your desk the whole time to do some of those things. If you can meet a colleague for a walking meeting, or if you can do some of those other things, like, it's really good for your mental health just to change the environment up.
I think also, Carly, one of the things...
Sorry, Paul, I was just going to say the other thing too is, because I agree with everything you say, but also give your chance just to have a time out. Yeah. You don't have to be actually doing something. You don't have to have a podcast. You don't have to listen to, like, I get like, I'm accused constantly by the boys and Paul, you never answer your phone. I'm not attached to my mobile phone. So to me, it's a distraction and it takes away. I'd rather go on my walk and not have it, and just simply enjoy nature and look up and hear the birds and look at the sun or feel the breeze on my face. I want to actually change my mindset, and I want to feel that I've done something to nurture Tammy so that I'm better when I walk back in my door. I've not just done the same thing and I've not turned off my mind. And it's a really big distinction. We don't have to be on 24/7.
I think you have to teach yourself to do that. That's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
I want to pick up on that, though. I think that one of the biggest things we're seeing, Carly, is the day doesn't finish. And I want to ask you, Carly, and let's complete your sort of cycle of the day. Does your day finish? Because I think one of the things we're seeing, whereas when we leave the workplace, we tend to go home. So there's sort of a closure of the work day. Are you finding your day's finishing, or are you finding you're doing a lot of stuff because you're at home and there's no difference between? Because I think that's a really big part of it. And then I'll throw to you for the same question, Miss O.
Yeah, no, we're definitely finding the days extending, but it's because we don't feel like we can get enough done in the normal work day. So then we sort of chop in and out through dinner and through bedtime. And then once the boys are asleep, we'll come back and finish off whatever we haven't done, so that we're ready for the next day, because we haven't necessarily had enough time to do all the things we need to do because we're helping them out. So yeah, it's tough just trying to fit it all in. Yeah, you're right.
And on there, Miss, so how important is that structure of the day? And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems at the moment. Whether that's the ability to start your day with exercise, meditation, or go for a walk, or get your lunch. I think people's routines are completely thrown out by this. And one of my big things, I think people have got to get back to some sort of routine. And that means my work day is finished. And now I'm going to spend... Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think, going through and maybe just having a little diary in your mind for the next day, or you can take it to the point of, writing down what you're going to do between 7 and 9 and 11 and 1. And, but another big thing I think is people need to give themselves the weekends off at the moment.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
You might have work that you haven't finished, that week. So I'll get to it on Saturday. Well, no, still treat your weekends like, 2 days that are your days and your family's days. It's really, really important. And probably the last thing for me, Ruzi, is the biggest demotivating factor of making changes in your life for the better is failing quickly. So, you might say, well, this week I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to run 3 times a week. I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night and get 8 hours sleep. And by day 2, none of those things are happening.
Yeah.
So set yourself one change to make per week, and a realistic change. And that, if you're able to achieve that, and then the next week something else, the next week something else, all of a sudden you're making some really positive changes in your life.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to finish off, because we've had a really good discussion and covered a lot of sort of broad topics. So hopefully everyone's enjoyed that. But I agree. I think it's, if you're you have never meditated before, Tammy, it's probably a 1 minute breathing exercise or a couple of minutes. And I think that's probably the tip to that. If you haven't run before, haven't exercised, you're not going to go for a 25 kilometre run. And I think the other thing for me is don't compare yourself to, we've just had the Olympics, don't compare yourself to Olympians for whatever reason, or from a meditation point of view, someone like Tammy's that been meditating for 20 years. Be a better version of yourself each day. And I think that's a really good way to look at it. Hopefully there's some really good tips, but that's probably the main one I would leave everyone with. Can I be better tomorrow than I was today? What does that look like? Oh, look, it's 10 more push-ups. Then the day after, I'll do it instead of a 1 minute breathing exercise. I might get a 2 minute meditation in. And then before we know it, we've got confidence, we've built things up, and we look back and we go, wow, I'm actually now I'm meditating for 10 minutes. I'm taking a pause during the day. I'm going for a walk in nature. I'm running. I'm walking the dog. And gee, where did that come from? But if you try and do that all at once, you're 100% right, Miss O. So,
but I think, Rizzy, also just to round it out,
yep.
Leaders need to set the example.
Yeah, great.
And for people to understand that it's okay to do those things, they need to see their leaders doing those things too. So you need to be the best leader that you can be as well. And looking after yourself first is absolutely one of those things. Yeah,
100%. We talk about it all the time. Leaders are role models. So if you want a healthy, happy workplace, it has to start. It has to start with you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tammy. Fantastic tips. Thanks, Miss O. Have a great week.
Thank you, everyone. And just practice your kindness to self.
Yes, we will.
All right, fantastic.
Take care.
Thanks very much. Thank you for Culture Cast Live. We'll see you again next week.